you don't fool around with cocaine. And heroin you never fool with, because not only is it fiercely addictive, but it is so diluted and polluted and messed up by the people that sell it that if you shoot the stuff into your veins, you're obviously shooting suicide and playing Russian roulette. So you don't fool with that either. It's a highly addictive and dangerous thing, far more so than cocaine. Marijuana, they now found out, is dangerous to the brain cells. And biopsies on the brains of people who are marijuana smokers shows the same deterioration as heroin addicts. Lesser, but it's there, which means that progressively it gets worse. So all of this is coming to explain that drugs, speed, uppers, downers, marijuana, crack, hashish, heroin, all of these are dangerous to the cardiac respiratory system, which means when you use it, you are in danger of dying then. That's scary, because taking aspirin, you're not in danger of dying. If you take a prescription medicine, you're not in danger of dying. You take some of that stuff, and you are in immediate, imminent danger of dying. And if they rush you to an emergency room, there's no way of the doctors there knowing what you've got. They've got to run a blood sample on you, and while they're running blood tests on you, you can be dead, particularly in most emergency rooms. I actually went to a hospital in this area that should remain nameless, which is normally very good, and I was taken to the emergency room because I had some problems a couple of years ago, and they wheeled me into the room there, and I lay there, and nobody came, and nobody came, and nobody came, and I was there 45 minutes. And finally, as sick as I was, I raised myself on my elbow, and I thundered at the nearest white coat that went by, "Get me a doctor now!" And they did. The doctor came running over and said, "What's this man doing here?" I said, "What do you mean what I'm doing here? I'm 50 minutes here. That's what I'm doing here." And they put me in a room right away and gave me lots of attention. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Now, I had enough strength, that my last strength at that moment was to yell at the person nearest to me. Usually I yell at my wife in that area, or one of the children, or the dogs, or the birds, or something, or the rabbits, or something. But believe me, I've seen that happen. My sister-in-law almost lost her daughter in an emergency room from an allergic reaction because they were taking too much time to get over to find out what the allergy was. The child was going into anaphylactic shock in the chair. Finally, her mother said, "My daughter is in anaphylactic shock. I'm going to sue you." Boom! Everybody ran over. Zip, zap, zim, bing. The kid was treated. All you got to use is the magic word. "I'm going to sue you." You get immediate reactions from that. Please explain John 18:31. Why the Jews said it is not lawful for us to put any man to death. Under Roman law, they could execute nobody. Got that? Under Roman law, they could execute nobody. They had to go through the Roman authorities for permission to execute. That's why there was a state execution in reference to Jesus of Nazareth. So, it is not lawful for us to put any man to death. The Romans won't let us do that. Even if they stoned somebody, they had to obtain some degree of permission on a religious basis to do it. John 19:7, the Jews said, "By our law he ought to die." That's right. So if they had it their way, under the law of Moses, they would have invoked that and their interpretation of it, and they would have stoned him. But they had to go through Rome because Rome was governing them. And that's the reason why. If you were talking with an agnostic about the Bible, and he said he has a lot of trouble believing Noah put 2 of every kind of animal in the ark, that it's a fairy tale, how would you answer him? I would say that it's obvious that Noah was located in the Mediterranean area of the world. And 2 of every kind of animal that was available to him in that area, and we don't know what animals were in that area. It could have been a great variety of what was on earth at the time. He put them in the ark, 2 in the ark for the purpose of multiplication, obviously. So if the person says, "Well, I don't believe that," then I would say, well, If you were God and you were going to destroy the world and you selected somebody who was going to survive it with their family, what would you do if you wanted to have animals on the earth afterwards? You would take one of each, wouldn't you, or as many of that you could get on the boat. It was a large boat. It was 360 feet long, 45 feet wide, and 50 feet high. That's a pretty good sized boat, and it wasn't really a boat, it was a barge, a huge barge. And they reported sighting it in ice at an altitude of 14,000 feet on Mount Ararat. And they've been trying to get up there to get through the ice to see if they can find it, and they haven't been able to get permission from the Turkish government, who have been harassed by the Russians about actually looking for it. But Dr. John Montgomery climbed Mount Ararat, and others, and they maintain that it's there. So, and I held a piece of wood taken from it in my hand that had been analyzed, and it was white oak impregnated with bituminous pitch, and its date was over 5,000 years old, which would coincide with the ark. So I've seen that, and I've read the testimony of people that have taken hewn beams out of the ice where it is imprisoned. So I think that the finding of the actual boat itself would certainly be, and its size would certainly be a testimony to the fact that the story was anything but mythological, because why would you build a boat that big for 8 people? Doesn't make any sense. So I would say to him, you're not being reasonable, and it doesn't say that he took 2 of everything everywhere in the world. Besides, the flood wasn't everywhere in the world. This is where I always get in trouble with the Creation Research Institute in San Diego. I say to them, the llamas that live in Mount Chimborazo in Brazil at an altitude of 19,000 feet were not in the ark. The kangaroos which hop all over Australia were not in the ark. There are animals that were not in the ark because the flood's purpose was to destroy human life, man and his animals, where he was. At that point in the history of the development of mankind, it was a very limited area. And the waters covered the earth where man was. You'd have a difficult time proving, geologically and even biblically, that the waters covered Mount Everest at 30,000 feet. You would have a great deal of difficulty sustaining that, geographically and physically. Now, of course, if God wanted to have the waters cover the earth at an altitude of 200,000 feet, he could do whatever he wants to do. But the biblical evidence doesn't indicate that, and the geological evidence doesn't indicate that. Why are we pushing it so hard? All the purpose of the flood was to destroy man and his animals, and he did. But I don't think he got to old hippity hop in Australia, because that is not an animal that is in any way connected with the Middle East. No way. It's a large rodent indigenous to Australia, or as they say over there, Australia. And the llamas, if you've seen them in the zoos, you know perfectly well that they are a strange creature found only where? The Andes Mountains in South America. That's it. So that's true of other places too. So that's why I think they're making a lot of noise about nothing when they push too hard on that particular subject.